be speaking on the dangers of pride. And in this sermon, I will talk about the dangers of pride and how it affects our Christian life, basically. And first, I would like to say the definition that I googled online, and because I was curious what the definition of the actual definition of pride is. I always knew what pride is, like in a sense from like Bible school and stuff, but I just want to know the Google definition, and I actually really liked that a lot. So one of the definitions was a feeling or deep pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements. And so keep this definition in mind, because I will be keen into this definition quite a bit. And so let's see what the Bible says about pride. So pride is a sin, right? Mark 7:21 says, "For from within, out of the heart of a man come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, slander, pride, foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." So basically, sin blinds people. When people are blind, they no longer see what the vision is for their life. And I think this is very dangerous also because once you're blind, people don't really know that they are led by pride. And so when they do their church activities, they end up glorifying themselves over God. And so this is actually my first point, is that, well, obviously pride is a sin, and that's my first point. My second point is pride leads to self-glorification. Now, I'm not sure if glorification is a word or not, but I'm not sure. But anyways, it makes sense to me. So, yeah, self-glorification. And so I think what happens is people are not satisfied by God's achievement. Going back to definition, they're not satisfied by God's achievements in their life. So they end up turning to their own achievements. And basically, I will be getting all my examples from Babylon. They're going to be all connected to Babylon. So let's turn to Genesis chapter 11. I'm not going to be reading from this Bible. It's just here for the looks. So anyways, I'm going to read from verse 4. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city." Oh, by the way, this is about the Tower of Babylon. And it says, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." And just a little background on this. This is because I read the whole Genesis, and this is chapter 11. Chapter 9 speaks about the flood. Chapter 10 is the generations of, I believe it's Noah. It's a list of generations. And so, to me, the way I looked at this is these are basically, if you look at all of humanity, this is like the very first calling that God has on the people, which is to scatter and multiply and to fill basically the whole world. And in Genesis chapter 11, it says that they actually settled in one spot, and they want to build themselves a huge tower, and because otherwise they would scatter. And so I believe that often in our lives, we can't see the huge picture that God is trying to achieve in our life, which would be, in their case, which would be to fill the globe, to spread the gospel still between them, because believe it or not, there was a lot of bad cities already at this time. And these are like fresh generations too. And so we can't see, the big picture that God has for our life. And so with our human mind, we always, we think logically. And so we know, basically, we set a goal or we want to achieve something. And so instead of doing small things, per se, like God would do, we would go humbly under God, and we would do, step by step to reach the goal If we just look at the goal and we just say, okay, I don't need to do any of this, I'm just going to go to the goal right away. And we would, achieve it that way. And so God likes small beginnings. And so what happens is oftentimes we build a huge tower of pride, just like in Genesis verse 4, in per se our ministry or our church or any field of the church. Just speaking strictly about the church, is we build this huge tower of pride because we can't see the big picture that God has, and so we try to get around it and we try to glorify ourselves that way. And so then my third point is pride leads to destruction. And so I'm going to read out of Daniel chapter 5. This is also about the Babylonians. They were a prideful people. And so this is the story about the writing on the wall. And it's about King Belshazzar, which is the son of Nebuchadnezzar. And so the story about this basically is this King Belshazzar. He was a pretty prideful king. Well, he was a prideful king, and basically one day God sent down his hand, and it wrote on the wall, and he was super confused and he was scared about what was going on. And so he called all his magicians and stuff to see if they can translate and see what it says and stuff, and they couldn't. And so obviously it's in the book of Daniel, so Daniel comes to the rescue and stuff, and with the power of God, he is able to interpret what it says on the wall. And so I'm going to read that. Verse 20, it starts with verse 26. So it says, here's what these words mean. So these are the 3 words that was written. Many, which means God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scale and found wanting more. Paris, your kingdom is divided and given into the Medes and Persians. Then at Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple. A gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the 3rd highest ruler in the kingdom. That was the reward for him. And sorry. And that very night, Belshazzar, king of Babylonians, was slain, and Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. So I believe the point of this is basically often in our lives, or per se in our ministry or whatever it is, if we have pride and we only glorify ourselves instead of God, God will not be mocked, and so He will replace you. And so in this guy's case, he should have died. It says he was slain. I mean, you don't know you're not gonna die, but you'll first of all probably spiritually be dead, because God will not be with you because you have sinned, and but you will be replaced. And so my call to you today is basically to humble yourself. And the Bible says in James chapter 4 verse 10, humble yourselves and He will lift you up. And so if you submit yourself under God, and you go through where God leads you and where God takes you, and you don't focus on you want to be big, or you want to be super popular or whatever, and some popular preacher or whatever, and you follow God's calling on your life, not only will He lift you up at the end, but most importantly, you will glorify Him, which that's what we're actually created for, is to glorify God.